Welcome, my brother, my sister. This is Davey speaking to you. And here's the thing, my brothers, when we look at the world today, we see a distortion of values. It seems like humanity is getting lost again, already losing that knowledge of right and wrong, good and bad. And then you think, but how did we get to this point? Has it always been like this? We've been getting a lot of new subscribers here on the channel. Welcome. And they haven't had the chance to see content that calls things what they are. Like most of you who have been here for more than 4 or 5 years and some for 12 years since the beginning, you had the opportunity, you are privileged. I used to say that already, right? For at least 10 years I've been saying this. Look, there will come a time when you won't be able to post this kind of thing. So you will be witnesses, right, of this information. But I tried to at least make a summary here, an introduction. That's what I'm going to do in this video, an introduction so you can see how strong the manipulation by the media was. I've already told you that I'm currently watching the MP4 files I have of the soap opera Dancy Des. I managed to get these files and they're full of cuts, by the way. But from what little I can still see, while people watched that soap opera back in 73, 76 when it was released, following the characters' stories, seeing how things unfolded, I'm seeing the terrible criminal indoctrination that the rotten TV network carried out here in Brazil. Just so you know, my brothers, this was conservatives' biggest mistake globally. It was this, thinking that TV shows, cartoons, soap operas, journalists' opinions were nonsense, just entertainment, that it wouldn't change anything in our lives, that it wouldn't make a difference. But it did. It was a very serious mistake that is still being made today. Television, my brother, something that airs on television, for example, on a channel is called a television network, right? Why is that? Because it traps whoever is watching, just like a fish. Don't you throw a net to catch fish? That's what television does. And the conservatives, they made the mistake of thinking it was nonsense. So while the guy was working, the soap opera Dança dos Dancides, for example, did that a lot. While the guy was working, the husband, dedicated, struggling to support the household, sweating, even giving up spending his salary on things he likes, right? How many guys give up buying a coupe, for example, which is their dream, a sports car, to buy a bigger car, to drive with the family, to go out for lunch on Sundays, right? How many Brazilian citizens have done that? But while this Brazilian citizen was making an effort for that, to give more comfort to his family, giving up his own preferences, the soap opera from Rotten Network, which is a television program, in other words, it programs whoever watches it, was poisoning them and reprogramming his own wife's mind. For what? So that he would be cheated on, so that he would accept a betrayal, and treating the care he had for his family as if he was just taking care of private property. The whole time the soap opera was talking about machismo. The fact, for example, of a husband wanting to accompany his wife so she doesn't go alone because it's more dangerous. We know statistically that criminals prefer elderly people, right? Younger people, women, right? When a criminal sees, they always prefer these people because they're more defenseless. So even that, the soap opera attacks fiercely, and by doing so, it causes that population, those people, to be shaped by these new doctrines. Even the main actress, she smokes all the time, right? They also encouraged that back then. She's one of the main characters and she's always hanging out with friends who smoke weed, literally, all the time. And that's shown as a good thing, right? Now look, I'm going to show you an example of manipulation, okay? I'm going to do what the media does here so you can see how easy it is. Look at this girl here. Everything I'm about to say now, pay attention, okay? This girl, right, a black woman, was brutally assaulted. You can see the bruise. The fact is undeniable. Look at her face, right? Let's give credit where credit is due. Look at this woman's face. She was severely assaulted by a man, right? And you know that men are physically stronger. So he assaulted a woman like this, right? You can see the bruise on her face. She's crying desperately, right? Asking for justice. And what does a guy like that deserve when he's caught, right? So look, what I did here is pretty much what the media does. By putting the images like this, creating this narrative on top with sad music, anyone would ask for justice. Anyone who sees this guy would want to beat him up, hit this guy. Now look, let's see what really happened. I'm even going to include an influencer talking. That woman there is also an influencer. Notice what she was doing. Look at this with me. So you can see how easy it is to manipulate. I took things out of context, right? I only put what is convenient for me without lying. She was assaulted by a man. Her face is swollen. She is crying desperately, asking the authorities to take action. She is asking for justice. So, I didn't lie to you at any moment. I told the truth. But see how easy it is, even telling the truth, to manipulate people? What really happened was this. Look, watch with me.
Look at this opportunist. She walks down the street with her friend recording and slaps other people, right? Watch closely what she's going to do to this man. She slaps the guy there, look, this man, and just walks away. But she found someone who didn't want to let it go. He slapped her in the face. Look at her face. He disfigured the woman's face. Some people commented. They said he should have hit her twice to finish the job. Comment below. What do you think? What day is this?
Do you get it, folks? You can see the image of the elderly man sitting in the chair, poor guy, right? He doesn't even understand the situation. She goes there and slaps the face of a family man, a law-abiding citizen, a taxpayer. She goes there and slaps him in the face. Imagine if his son showed up, or if it were your father. Just think about it. Then a woman like that shows up acting nasty. She wants to slap him for online attention. She's an activist. Taking advantage even of the feminist laws that are being implemented all the time. So look at the effect of putting one citizen above another. This wasn't in Brazil. This is just to give you an idea that this agenda being implemented here is a global thing. It's not a country A or B thing. The countries that bow to leftist doctrines, that implemented leftist regimes, are literally getting screwed. So that's it, right? She would slap citizens in the face for no reason in the middle of the street. She would go around slapping people because she thinks she has the right to do that. But then she runs into a crazy guy, you know? She messes with a guy who's already lost his family, is unemployed, already suffering the consequences of this indoctrination, and the guy has nothing left to lose, right? Like people say, you don't hit a man's face. And I'm not going to ask you to answer in the comments, otherwise the video gets taken down, right? But just imagine this situation. A woman like that does this to your father. Now that I've made this introduction, you saw how easy it is to manipulate. If I hadn't shown those images at first, you would definitely, right, also join the cause. And that's what the mainstream media did, I repeat, with their soap operas, movies, cartoons, journalists' opinions, and so on. It was activism disguised as journalism. And the conservatives' mistake was precisely not noticing their scheme. So I'm going to show you a transformation from wine to water, right? From water to wine. This is France as it is now, Paris. This was recorded in June 2025 on the 28th, right? The Pride Parade there in France. See, this isn't about the right to express your opinion or your privacy, no. I want you to see that this is debauchery, an attack on morality and public decency. It is. Also notice that those people there aren't Europeans, right? They were born in Europe and say they're European, but they're not. It's obvious they're not people. Amen. And for us to start being ground bridge council cars, no. Look there, that monument, you see it. You see it there. I don't need to. Bye. To speak, right? That is built. And then I'm in the middle of children, in the middle of elderly people. Women, right? The voice doesn't ask. They put an animal with bamboo this big and then everyone, you know, keeps praising, getting really into it. What happens here in Sao Paulo, in the big capitals, happens all over the world, right? Because it's a movement of debauchery. It's no coincidence, my brothers, that all over the world, this movement is starting to be seen differently. There are even people who are part of it asking for separation, you know, since they see it's going down a very extreme path. Yeah, it's no coincidence that some countries, you know, have already classified it as a group. How can I say it? Not as a bad group, but as an extremist group, okay? So that's what they do, right? That's France today. Yeah, France, which used to be known as, especially Paris, you know, as the city of love, the place for couples in love. It used to be like that, right? Back in the 60s and 70s. Nowadays, you know, people who go there have told me that, Davi. I went recently, a friend of mine went too, and he said there's nothing beautiful there anymore, you know. They're old houses, and actually, they're even in bad condition, you know. They're not very well preserved anymore. You can already see, you know, the country is in bad shape economically. And a country that smells like pee. You know, since there's a law, at least back during the Olympics, we saw scenes of people urinating, right? Yeah, in public squares, you know, urinating there. And the police didn't do anything because it would be seen as a way to target people of color, because they were the ones doing it, okay? So they ended up being afraid of being labeled as oppressors, so they let it go. This happened during the Olympics. It seems like there are even open-air bathrooms, you know, urinals for people to do just that. So today, the capital of love has become the capital of pee. It smells like pee. It doesn't smell like roses, like rose petals. It smells like pee, okay? Now, when you see this situation, you think, damn, that's a country I wouldn't visit, right? Some people say, what a crappy country. But it's a big mistake, my brother, to think like that. It's a huge mistake to think like that, okay? Don't think that way. That's how we ended up here. This isn't about any one country. The old world was once the cradle of morality and decency. These modern laws, right, about order and so on, about justice, all come from Europe, right? But that started to change. And why is that? Because conservatives thought that having leftists, right, having socialists, having communists taking over their media wasn't a problem because media is just entertainment. It's nonsense. They thought that, and that's when they got burned. And today, right, we have this, as you just saw, as if it's the most normal thing in the world. Values are being distorted, but it wasn't always like this. Take a look at this image here from a short mini documentary that someone made, I don't know who, which shows that France, my brother, was the opposite of that. I think if you showed this image of France to these citizens here at the beginning of the century, they would simply say it was fake, that it was the work of the devil. Because they would never believe it, right? That their country would turn into this. Because France in the past was like this. Look. Take a look at this with me. Do you see him?
That was the last time the French guillotine fulfilled its duty in public. In June 1939, the condemned man, Eugène Weidmann, never closed his eyes, having been sentenced to death for multiple violent crimes. His rapid breathing betrayed the fear he felt inside. Meanwhile, outside, some workers were busy around a wooden structure. The sound of metal pieces clinking stood out sharply in the silence. What they were assembling was the guillotine France was known for. 150 years its blade gleamed coldly, as if it carried the weight of centuries of French order and deterrence. Following prison procedure, a dark suit was given to him. This wasn't a special tradition, but a way to allow him to keep his dignity in his final moments. Having spent the night awake, his eyes were empty and his steps unsteady. He needed support just to stand. At the end of the hallway, a priest was waiting with a passage of scripture in his hands. In the soft murmur of prayers, Weidmann's emotions calmed only a little, although his hands still trembled uncontrollably. He was then led to the execution site. On the way, a guard offered him a drink and a cigarette. He refused the alcohol, but with trembling hands, he lit the cigarette. One can't help but think, even a man accused of terrible crimes longed for a bit of familiarity and calm at the end. Before he approached the device, the guard delicately cut the collar of his shirt. This was to minimize any obstruction during the execution. By this point, Weidmann was almost unconscious. Two guards held him and led him to the cold device. The button was pressed, and everything stopped abruptly. A brief silence hung over the scene, broken only by scattered whispers, reminding everyone that what had just happened was real. After that day, France put an end to the era of public executions. An era that relied on public punishment came to an end, and that leaves us with a question to reflect on. Does true civilization mean no longer using fear to maintain order?
You see, even at the very end, right, the documentary still kind of softens it a bit. I don't feel sorry for criminals, right? That's a form, as we just saw, of manipulation. Why? Because you saw a man who was afraid, a man who was trembling, unable to defend himself, being executed. Now, if they showed the people who were brutally taken by this man, comrades, begging for forgiveness, pleading for them not to do anything, saying they never did anything against him, He simply eliminated these people out of hatred, right? These people, your opinion would be completely different. So, my noble and dear brothers, a lack, right, of attention to this rotten media made them seize on real facts. In fact, this man felt fear. In fact, at that moment, this man had no way to defend himself and he was executed in public. But, I repeat, if people saw what he did, if the documentaries produced by the media also showed that part, 90% of the people who criticized the action would definitely not criticize it anymore. Does that mean we have to bring back the guillotine? I'm not going to get into that debate. Each of you has your own opinion. Please keep this to yourself and don't comment so we don't make things worse since they're now holding us responsible. If there are too many comments that they classify as hate, then yeah, the video gets taken down. But what I want to say is this. This is about those narratives. That's what this video was made for. It's not to get into a debate about guillotines or anything like that. It's to get into this debate here. The media omitting part of the story, showing only the part that suits them. And it's very naive to say that the media lies. Right, it distorts, it takes things out of context, but it always gives an opinion based on the facts. It's like I did in the first one at the very beginning, so you can see. If I take, right, the woman slapping men in the face, if I show a black woman, like in her case, who was beaten by a man who is desperate and asking for justice, I'm not lying. That really happened. But for you to truly understand what happened, you need the full context. And the media has always done this, taking things out of context. They're doing the same thing now with the invasion. Right now, you know, the invasion in Spain by the Moroccans. At this moment, the cars, the Spanish police patrols are having stones thrown at them by these invaders. There were 50,000, they now admit. You saw it here with me, right? Them saying it was 4,000. I'll make another video later if you want. They were saying it was 4,000. Now they admit it's 50,000. The police officers are trying to organize those people. The media has been saying it's not because they're looking for Nemcola. If you think about what they're saying, it doesn't hold up. They're looking for improvements. If it were just that, why would 50,000 people, as they're saying, actually it's more than 80,000, why did they decide to do this right now? Why did 50,000 people suddenly feel like it? You realize it doesn't add up or make sense. Something triggered it. But what was the trigger? A law, right? That the Europeans passed, which says if a citizen arrives there, if the person is there, they have free movement throughout the whole region. They passed this law which did away with the borders and people rushed there. It was just that simple. The solution is, as you've already seen, even during this walk, even during this walk, that's why I asked you to pay attention to the people, right? To the physical appearance of these people, so you can see with your own eyes that they are not native Europeans, right? They were born there. In fact, they were born there. Women go there pregnant, and sometimes, or not, they manage to get legal status, get a visa, and say they're Europeans. That's it. But they're not. You can see it clearly. And the worst part is, these people don't go there to understand or respect the culture of that nation. They go there to change the culture of that nation, to turn that nation into what their own nation already is. They don't go there to respect the local customs or laws. They aim to completely change the country. And the left knows this, but sees each of them as a future voter. Each person will vote for what benefits them most. So, if it's the left that proposes that they can bring their families, that they can live there, you know, peacefully doing what they want, why would they vote against it? As you can see, in the image itself, you saw when you see a European, they're already older, they're already an older person. Because Europeans got it into their heads that it was better to have a cat, for example, to be a pet parent than to have children. So their numbers went down. There are fewer of them, right? A couple at most has a child. Some don't have any at all, so their population is bound to vanish. Nobody mentions this, but it's true. Europeans will disappear from the world. And then there will be these new Europeans who are not Europeans, right? They're being colonized. On average, these guys have 3 kids per wife, right? They can have up to 4. In the case of Moroccans, up to 4 wives, 3 kids with each one. A woman can have a child roughly every 9 months, right? Sometimes she gets pregnant again before the recovery period ends. So, that's it. In 10 years, right? Each one bearing 3 children with 4 women for each man, 50,000, do the math, right? 50,000 times 3 per year, the Europeans are screwed, right? So it's not hard for us to predict here that there's going to be a lot of trouble ahead, because those people won't be satisfied, right, with just dominating that, and they'll want riches from other countries like ours, for example, right? Which is already giving everything away too. That's it, my brothers. I hope you understood. I hope I helped here, right? You saw, man, that he was executed in public, so you can see how strict it was, right? How conservative they really were. It was extreme. You messed up. Now you're going to be an example so other people don't make the same mistake. You'll pay a high price for your crime. That was it, period. See how conservative Europe was? I showed this video for that reason. I'm not bringing up whether it should have happened, but so you can see what it was like, right? That country, how conservative it was and what it has become. I must have put both images there for you if I managed to, right? It doesn't even look like the same place, does it? You see what it is now and what it was and think it's different, but it's actually the same. That's it, my brothers. Leave a like. As you know, making this content isn't easy. So please share it, show it to more people, and think about it. To help us out, leave a nice, chill comment, okay? Hold on. Leave a comment. It really helps, even if it's just an emoji. Thanks for being here, and to everyone who does that. Becoming a member also supports the channel. God bless, hugs, and we're in this together. I'm out.